All right. All right. Okay. Well, so sorry about all that mess and about what was going on there. So I will just get that going. All right. So, where were we? So, yeah. Now, basically, to start with, we've actually got something we've never done before, which is a cinematic intro trailer. So this is going to be appearing at the start of the game when players get their hand in about 2 weeks. So without further ado, I'll stop all this faffing around and I'll get that one started. So here we go.
Sir, just what are we facing here?
A relic of the old world. Ready your men, Captain. We will only get one chance. And remember, when you hear the whispers, call for help. Do not attack!
When you hear the whispers, what do you think he was on about?
It's Dorman, right?
Yeah?
Then Dorman. Shut your damn mouth. Ugh, why do I always get stuck with these rookies?
Hey, the kid's got a mean cleave. Give him a chance.
Quiet!
Sullen!
A mean cleave, eh, Captain? Rookie can't even lift his own sword. Captain Oren? Captain? It's here. Rain! Send the signal!
What the fuck?!
Rain! On my back, Rookie! Blade up!
Come on! I'm ready! I'm ready! It's a man!
No, it's not. Run!
Captain! Captain!
Why are you here? What is this? Stop! Humanity isn't ready.
On your feet, lad.
Sir, the captain,
You'll be fine. Here.
What is it?
Get the body.
Stop. Mortal. It can still be contained. You don't know what you have unleashed.
Your kind no longer control this world. We cannot destroy your body, it's true. But you will watch as we destroy everything you have built. Bind him! Feed. Grow, my child. I'll make sure you can eat your fill.
Sir, just what are we
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Now, Path of Exile 2 is going into early access in around 2 weeks on December the 6th. But even though it's early access, this isn't just some small taste. The game is huge. In this livestream, we're going to be introducing everything you can expect. So without further ado, let's roll the gameplay trailer.
Existence is a thing of beauty, precious, but impermanent. Life and death are mortal enemies, and yet bound to one another. The continuation of life must be protected at all costs. Some have said, my methods are brutal. To this, I say, there can be no salvation without sacrifice. We are faced with the end, and I will do what I must. Those who obsess with death, let them soon be acquainted with it.
Now, as you just saw, even in early access, Path of Exile 2 is a big game. It's actually been 5 years since we announced PoE 2, and over that time we've revealed a lot, but it's been in bits and pieces. It's pretty hard to keep track of it all, so today we're going to do a full rundown of all the content that will be available at the start of early access. Classes, character progression systems, and for the first time, a full overview of the end game. This is going to be a big one, so get comfortable. For 20 years, Rayclast has been free from any sources of corruption, but the Count of Ogham, tempted by promises of power, intends to harness it once more. The dead are rising, monsters are mutating, and madness is spreading. Under the dark influence of corruption, the Count doles out sentences of death to any who would question him. And this is where you find yourself at the start of PoE 2. Explore the dark forests of Ogham, traverse the barren plains of the Vasteri Desert, and delve into the jungle ruins of Utsal, an ancient Vaal city. There are challenging monsters, hidden runes, lost camps and treasures, roaming merchants, and of course, unique bosses. No two areas are the same. It falls to you to track down the seed of corruption, the source of all this devastation. On the way, you'll face fearsome monsters, meet strange characters, forge unlikely bonds, and uncover lost civilizations. But first, you'll need to pick a class. Now, early access will initially have 6 classes available. Let's have a look at them. The Monk is a fast and furious melee fighter. He dashes in and out of combat, and his mechanics involve building up and keeping momentum. Like all classes in PoE 2, you'll want to use a wide variety of skills and mix and match different combos. To get new skills, you will first need to find skill gems. Using a skill gem will open the gem cunning menu, which shows all the active skills available in PoE 2. You can choose an existing skill to level up, or choose to engrave a new one. Since this is a level 7 skill gem, even if you pick a new skill, it will immediately be level 7, so there's no harm in trying out something new. The monk primarily uses the quarterstaff. There are 3 skills of martial arts: lightning, ice, and wind. But don't think you have to stick to just one. The best combos are going to involve mixing elements of all 3. Let's try killing Palm. Like many monk skills, this can be used to quickly take advantage of a specific situation. If there's an enemy on low life, you can use killing Palm to dash to them and kill them instantly. This will provide a power charge. Then we can use a different skill to consume that power charge for a much more devastating attack. The monk also has powerful combo skills. Tempest Bell, for example, is a skill that places a giant resonating bell. Hitting the bell causes it to ring, dealing damage to all enemies around it. You can also do things like freeze or shock the bell, which will add elemental damage to the strikes. The monk also has a variety of abilities to empower his staff. If an enemy is close to being stunned, you can use Staggering Palm to punch them down. After that, any attack you do will shoot out wind for good. There are 21 active skills for quarterstaves, so this just scratches the surface of the options that you have. By endgame, you'll be dashing from pack to pack, spewing projectiles and obliterating strings of enemies with huge combo attacks. Now if you like a style of melee that's a little slower but hits much harder, then the warrior is for you. He pounds the ground with big chunky attacks and can shrug off the hits of small enemies with large amounts of armor. Even though the mace slams are slow, you never lose control. Longer attacks can be retargeted as you go, and if you find yourself committed to a long attack, you can dodge roll out of it at any time. Among the skill option for maces, you will find a variety of slams, fire attacks, war cries, and shield skills. Here, I'm going to slam the ground, rending it apart with lines of fire. Any slam skill will then cause these fissures to erupt with lava. I can even run through them with a skill like Stampede to do huge amounts of damage. Warrior can also use war cries, which can empower your next skill. Seismic Cry, for example, will double any slam from your next attack. The Stampede counts as a slam, so I can double that for even more craziness. If you want to go a little faster and be a little more defensive, equip a shield. In PoE 2, you can raise your shield at any time to block all damage from the front, even spells. While holding up your shield, your stun meter will build as you take damage, so be careful. If it reaches 100%, your stance will break and you will be vulnerable. Some enemies also have unblockable attacks, which are indicated by this red flash. If you see one of these coming, be sure to dodge out of the way. Using a shield also gives you access to shield skills, like Shield Charge, which allows you to charge towards enemies and stun them. While charging, you're also blocking the whole time, so you have full damage immunity from the front. The warrior also has access to totems. Some totems have built-in abilities, like Shockwave Totem, which can be placed to stun nearby enemies and trigger aftershocks like those from the Earthquake. But you can also get Ancestral Warrior Totems, which allow you to use any slam skill in your repertoire. This is a meta skill, which means that it's a skill you can put other skills into. I can take a slam like Sunder and socket it into my Ancestral Warrior Totem. Now when I summon him, he'll sit there and slam the monsters from a distance. There are 20 active skills for maces, so there's a lot more to try out, but by endgame you're going to be dropping hammers from the sky, moving fearlessly into combat, and separating the very earth you stand on. Time for some ranged attacks. The ranger is primarily about the bow, but we wanted to make sure that she feels agile as well. In PoE 2 you can shoot while moving. Combined with all the skills the ranger has that allow you to jump around, you will have a lot of mobility in combat. Bow skills have a variety of lightning, poison, ice, and physical attacks. Lightning attacks bounce around between touches. You can also stick lightning arrows in the ground which explode when hit by the bouncers, or electrocute enemies to take them out of combat. Ice attacks allow you to slow and freeze enemies to keep them away from you. Using poison, not only can you slowly damage your enemies from afar, but also grow some interesting plants. With 21 bow skills, and all the mobility and combo tools the ranger has, you can take advantage of every situation. By endgame, you'll be creating hundreds of arrows, be they falling from the sky, bouncing around between enemies, or spraying out of tornadoes. You might have noticed in the bottom left of the screen that the flask slots look a little different. In Kiwi 2, you have one dedicated life flask slot and one mana flask slot. Flasks gain charges as you kill enemies, and typically allow you to heal 6 or 7 times if they're full. But that's not the only thing you can use charges for. Charms are a new item type that will automatically defend you from various debuffs or damage types. Having trouble with getting frozen? Equip a thawing charm. When it's fully charged, it will make you immune to freeze for 3 seconds if you get frozen. To recharge them, just kill more monsters. You can gain more slots for charms by upgrading your belt. The mercenary wields a crossbow that can be loaded with different ammo types, offering versatility, power, and mobility. All classes in Path of Exile 2 can be controlled with WASD, which makes this class play exactly like a shooter. With a crossbow, you will find skills that work like shotguns, sniper rifles, assault rifles, and even grenade launchers. But not only that, there are a wide variety of more interesting elemental ammos too. It's very fast to switch between ammo types, so long as you already have them loaded, which makes the mercenary able to combo abilities together for devastating effect. Use Glacial Bolt to create walls of ice to separate enemies, then switch to Fragmentation Rings to explode the ice, dealing massive AoE damage. If I come across an armored enemy, I could use armor-piercing rounds to break their armor, and then high-velocity rounds to take them down. Or perhaps I could fire a gas grenade to poison enemies before detonating a cloud with an explosive shot for massive damage. If you want to call in some suppressing fire, you can summon artillery beams. These have a minimum range, so you'll want to prepare your position carefully before moving in. There are 22 active skills for crossbow. By endgame, you'll be calling destruction down from the sky as you litter the battlefield with grenades and pepper your enemies with your automatic shotgun. If you're looking to take a back seat and let your minions do the work, then the Witch should be your choice. She can call forth hordes of undead monsters to fight for her, while casting powerful chaos spells that debilitate her enemies. Occult skills are some of the most varied in the game, with skeletons, noxious spells, specialty minions, curses, and sacrificial magic. Before we talk about minions, we'll have to talk about a new resource in Path of Exile 2 called Spirit. This is a Spirit Gem, which allows you to pick from a range of persistent skills. All classes have a variety of these skills which can add some very interesting effects, like Arctic Armor, which does cold damage to enemies that hit you, or Raging Spirits, which summon fiery skulls each time you cast a fire spell. For the Witch though, we'll want to be using our Spirit to create permanent minions. These minions will be revived automatically when they die, so you don't have to worry about resummoning them. Here I'm using the skill screen to allocate which minions I would like in my horde. You can see the spirit cost of each one. Skeletal warriors are cheap but weak, useful for tanking damage and distracting enemies. But I want more heavy hitters in my army, so I'm going to unsummon some warriors and instead add skeletal arsonists. Permanent minions come with special active abilities called command skills. You can order these guys to detonate your own minions for even more damage and area of effect. If you want a bigger army, you'll need a scepter. This new weapon type is imbued with even more spirit, allowing you to summon even more friends. And if you want an even bigger army than that, you can take advantage of corpses to summon true hordes of minions. But what can a witch do while her army is at work? Well, she has a range of chaos spells to spread disease amongst your enemies, or bone skills to impale them. Or, you can curse them to make them weaker so your horde can take them down. There are 25 active occult skills. By the endgame, you will be the leader of a fearsome army of the dead, consuming everything in its path. The sorceress bends the elements to her will, using them to unleash devastation on her foes. This classic spellcaster weaves a flurry of elemental magic from afar. The elemental skills have everything you might expect and more. Fireballs, icy explosions, lightning storms, you get the idea. Each spell is unique and has many different ways to build and combo with others, even between different elements. For example, Flame Wall conjures a burning line that not only damages enemies, but also empowers all projectiles that pass through it. If you place a wall and fire lightning sparks through it, they'll gain extra fire damage. It's a good idea to take advantage of the ability to automatically swap weapons when you use certain skills. Having a special staff with bonuses to fire skills, and another with bonuses to lightning skills can really power up a combo like this. The sorceress can also take advantage of powerful trigger gems. For example, you could grab the Cast and Ignite gem and use it with Firestorm. As you ignite enemies, the counter will go up in the top left corner. When it's full, Firestorm will automatically be cast at the enemy that was ignited. There are 25 active elemental skills. By endgame, you'll be firing on projectiles left and right as you rain down elemental storms on your foes. Now, those are the characters that will be available at the start of Early Access, but we will be adding 6 more character classes with just as many skills and options as these. There's a lot more to come. There's one more important thing to mention about skills. Even though we talk about them as belong to each class, in reality there are no restrictions. You can use all these skills on any class so long as you have the attributes. For example, a Poison Ranger might want to cry out using occult curses to increase her poison damage. Or a monk might want to trigger elemental ice walls to use with her glacial cascade combo. The possibilities for cross-class combos are practically unlimited. We're looking forward to what kind of things you guys might find. Now, Path of Exile is a game known for build customization, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what is possible yet. So let's talk about support gems. Path of Exile 2 has a system of support gems that can be combined with your active skills to dramatically change the way they work. If you find a support gem, then right-clicking it will open up this screen. Here you will find a variety of recommended support gems for each of your skills that you can pick between. For example, this is a multiple projectiles support gem and can be used to add multiple projectiles to any skill. Normally when you fire a grenade it'll look like this. But if we add multiple projectiles, then you get 3 of them. Once you have the gem, you can also freely move it between any of the skills on your character. If you want to have a multi-shot sniper rifle instead, then simply move the gem over to your high velocity round skill. Generally speaking, if it sounds like a support gem should work with a skill, then it will work. So it's a good idea to experiment. Note that you can only have one of each support gem on your character, so you'll want to think carefully about which supports can be used best with each skill for maximum damage. Now, if you want to stick to the recommendations, you should have a perfectly good time, but if you want to experiment a bit more, then uncheck that recommended button and you can see the full list of supports that will work with your skill. There are hundreds of support gems to choose from, and even we don't know the results of all the possible ways these can interact. Each skill can have up to 5 supports socketed into it, and if you're clever you can come up with some pretty interesting ideas. Now all of this is just scratching the surface. You can make frost vortexes, break people's armor, make minions explode, make skills repeat, make enemies set each other on fire, cull enemies or pin them to the ground. Supports let you drastically change the behavior of your skills and create your own unique build, or at least follow someone's OP build guide. So, speaking of builds, let's talk about one of the most iconic Path of Exile systems, the passive skill tree. Yes, it's huge. There are over 1,500 nodes on there. Now a lot of people open the tree and can get a little intimidated at first, but try not to be scared. There are lots of options, but at its core, it's pretty simple. Each level you get 1 point to put into the tree. Each class starts at a different location, but they all share the same tree. Around your section of the tree you'll find relevant bonuses for your character. You should be safe in the knowledge that there aren't many wrong choices here. Almost all the starting nodes will be useful for your character in some way. But if you do happen to make a choice you regret, you'll be able to respec any nodes you've taken by spending a little bit of gold. Now, the tree is generally divided up into clusters which have similar themes. In each cluster you will find small nodes that give simple bonuses like increased damage, but the real power comes from notables. Notables normally have much more interesting bonuses, and they tend to care a lot more about how your build works and what skills you're using. For example, in the mercenary area of the tree, this one gives a 25% chance for crossbow skills to not consume bolt. Here's one that gives grenades a chance to blow up a second time. This one gives a chance for projectiles to rebound off terrain, as well as giving you some pierce chance to make that more likely. Note that even though this is in the mercenary section, this would work with projectiles from all classes, so there are often reasons to go to different areas of the tree. In order to get between these clusters, you will generally have to allocate nodes in the attribute highways. Attribute nodes allow you to pick which attribute you would like to use, so it's very easy to get points for any attribute that your gear might need. You can change which attribute these nodes give you for half price at the respec vendor. In addition to notables, you will also find even larger passives called keystones. Keystones have both an upside and a downside, and often require changing your entire build to design around them. A great example is Giant's Blood, which allows you to wield two-hand weapons with a single hand, but doubles the attribute requirements of them. You can use a two-hand mace with a shield, or even dual wield them. How about Mind Over Matter, which makes all damage go to your mana pool first, before your life pool, but you lose 50% of your mana regen. Skills like these can be tough to build around, but if you're up for the challenge, they can be very rewarding. As we showed you earlier on the Sorceress, you can swap between weapon sets on the fly as you use certain skills. One of the new features in Path of Exile 2's passive tree is that you can choose to have your passive tree change as you switch between weapon sets to take advantage of specific bonuses on the tree. For the Sorceress, you might want to change between fire and lightning specialization. Or you could switch between one hand and a two-hand setup in order to be able to block boss attacks while following up with heavy hits from your bigger mace. Or perhaps you could have a full curse setup on your witch to debuff enemies before switching to a chaos degen build for maximum damage. If you want to stick with just one weapon set, you can just use these specialization points as bonus points to invest however you like, but creative players will find plenty of opportunities with this system. You can get weapon specialization points throughout the campaign from optional bosses and quests. For example, if I manage to defeat the Crowbell, I'll get a weapon specialization book. There are lots of other permanent boosts available from the campaign too. On the map you can see icons that indicate the many optional encounters you can find. Some of them have permanent character boosts, and others have powerful items. If you're having trouble getting past a boss, it might be a good idea to explore and see what you can find. For example, if you defeat Blackjaw the Remnant, you'll gain a permanent increase to fire resistance. One of the most important finds are spirit boxes. You can find the first one here in the canopy in Act 1. Defeat the boss in this area to acquire a permanent addition of spirit. The permanent buffs you gain from spirit are very powerful, and every class will find it useful, so make sure you hunt down these upgrades. There's one in each act. Now we haven't even talked about the most important element of character progression, items. That's why we're all here, right? Items in Path of Exile can be broken down into 4 rarity groups: normal, magic, rare, and unique. One of the things you're going to want to do as you play through the campaign is upgrade the items you find, and you can do that with currency items. An Orb of Transmutation will allow you to upgrade a normal item to a magic item with 1 mod. You can then apply an Orb of Augmentation to add a second mod, then use a Regal Orb to add a third mod, and upgrade it to a rare. Finally, you can use some Exalted Orbs to add more mods to your rare to a total of 6 mods. One of the things we think is really important is to make these options available to use as you play. All the items that add mods are much more common than they were in Path of Exile 1, so that you can use them throughout your campaign playthrough. We want you to find things on the ground that can be crafted into upgrades much more frequently. As well as making the drop rates on these items much more common, you can also get them by disenchanting unwanted gear at the magic item vendor. If you disenchant magic items, you can build up to an Orb of Transmutation, and by disenchanting rares, you can build up to Regal Orbs. Another important area of crafting items in PoE 2 is sockets. Some items you find will have sockets that can have Ezomite runes placed in them that add more mods to the item. If I insert this Glacial rune into my helmet, it will give extra cold resistance. This is a great way to solve problems that you have with your build, like resistances or damage. If you find socketed items that you don't have a use for, you can take them to the salvage bench in town to work towards an Artificer's Orb. This will allow you to add sockets to your existing items. Body armors and two-hand weapons can have up to 2 sockets, while the rest of your armor and one-hand weapons can only have 1 socket. You can also salvage items with quality to create items like armor scraps or whetstones. These will allow you to increase the quality of your items for an up to 20% boost. If you don't want to disenchant or salvage your items, you can always sell them for gold. Gold can be used to buy items from vendors, and we've tried to do a lot to make sure that the items they have for sale are actually useful. Every time you level up, they get more stock, so make sure to check back often. Other vendors offer a gamble. Pay a flat amount of gold and you'll get a random item of a specific type. This could be a great way to improve your gear, if you're lucky. Gold is also used to respec your passive skills. Take advantage of this system to experiment with your tree and rework it as required. The other thing you might want to use gold for is the currency exchange. This allows you to exchange currency items with other players on an open market, in exchange for a small gold fee. Now all items in Path of Exile are freely tradable. We never bind anything to your character, except gold. Now, most gear in Path of Exile 2 is randomly generated, but there's another type that isn't: unique. They are especially rare, each with a handcrafted set of unusual mods which can dramatically change a character's build. They're not just better rare items, they can do much stranger things that can fundamentally change your character. Corpse Wave will make any corpses you run through explode into clouds of poison. The Sands of Silk is a body armor that changes your dodge roll into a blink, morphing you into sand as you teleport past your foes. And of course, some uniques are just pure hits of dopamine, like Quill Ring, which just turns your bow attacks into full auto, doubling your attack speed. Each unique is something that you can build your character around. We try to make sure that most unique items have a potential use at endgame, even if you find them early on. And as you can see, every single unique item comes with custom art to match. The last character progression system that you can do during the campaign is Ascension. Starting in Act 2, you will come across Ascension trials, tests that you must complete to unlock your Ascension class. We'll explain these trials soon, but first let's take a look at what Ascending can do for your character. Each class has access to 3 Ascendancy classes, but at the start of Early Access, only 2 per class will be available. Ascendancy classes are unique to each character class, so choose wisely. They can drastically affect how you build your character. As a sorceress, you could become a Storm Weaver, a master of the elements. Tempest Caller causes elemental storms to be summoned each time you do a critical hit with a spell. With Strike Twice, you can stack 2 copies of Shock for more damage, and going deeper into the tree, you make all your damage types apply Shock. Make a Shock build from any skill. Alternatively, you could become a Chronomancer and command time itself. She literally has the ability to stop time with Time Freeze. Not only that, but she has many other time manipulation abilities. Using Temporal Rift, she can teleport back to a previous location, resetting her life and mana back to what it was. Or with Time Snap, she can reset all her cooldowns, and cast all her spells again. On the Warrior, you can choose between the Warbringer or the Titan. The Warbringer channels the might of his ancestors to gain tremendous power. Using Answered Call, you can summon ancestral spirits linked to each of your totems. With Jade Heritage, you can encase your body in a protective layer to absorb all damage until it breaks. Warcaller's Bellow allows you to explode the corpses of your enemies. And with Great Wolf's Howl, you can ignore the cooldowns of your war cries. Let all that anger out. The Titan class is all about hitting big. With Earthbreaker, every slam is a chance to create an aftershock. With Crushing Impacts, every hit becomes a crushing blow, which will allow you to stun your enemies with ease. With Surprising Strength, you can take advantage of stunned enemies to deal 40% more damage. As a ranger, you might choose to be a Jedi, an expert markswoman who can take down foes with style. With Endless Munitions, every attack gains an extra projectile. With Gathering Winds, she gains a small increase to movement speed with every attack, but be careful, she loses them when getting hit. With Eagle Eyes, she will never miss, allowing you to stop wasting all those passive points on accuracy. Alternatively, you could become a Pathfinder, a master of flasks and poison. She can choose from one of several throwable concoctions, allowing her to spend her flask charges to throw explosive bottles that deal various types of damage. A bleeding concoction will make your enemies bleed, while a fulminating one will shock your enemies, allowing you to do extra damage. Contagious Contamination allows her to spread poison between her foes, while Overwhelming Toxicity doubles the number of stacks they can be infected by. Running Assault allows her to move much more quickly while firing, while Relentless Pursuit makes her totally immune to being slowed by enemies. The Witch can ascend into the Infernalist or the Blood Mage. As an Infernalist, she can summon a loyal Hellhound companion. The Hellhound sets enemies on fire, as well as taking a percentage of the damage if the Infernalist gets hit. With Pyromantic Pact, you can turn your mana into Infernal Flame. As you cast more spells, the flame builds up, and if it overflows, you'll take damage. Using Bringer of Flame, you'll want to make sure you keep the flames topped up. While your Infernal Flame is above 30%, all damage from you and your minions will ignite enemies. She can also transform into a literal demon. While in demon form, she takes an increasing amount of damage, but her cast speed and damage increase rapidly as well. So if you're planning on transforming into a demon, make sure you stack a lot of life recovery. She can also become a Blood Mage, a master of life and healing.
All blood makers must pay the price of making skills cost life as well as mana, but in exchange, every monster they kill will drop life rests, which allow them to quickly gain back that life. With Crimson Power, she can gain large amounts of extra life, and with Vitality Siphon, she can use her spells to leech life back as well. Once you've got a significant amount of life, you can use Gore Spike to make your critical hits deal incredible amounts of damage. A monk who is in tune with the elements might become an Invoker. With Elemental Expression, the Invoker will create waves of elemental power each time he does a critical strike. With Faith as a choice, you gain the ability to meditate, allowing you to double your energy shield. Choose between I am the Blizzard or I am the Thunder to specialize in cold or lightning. And I Shall Rage will allow you to turn into an unbound avatar. Each time you apply a status ailment to an enemy, you gain Unbound Fury. When you have enough, you transform into an avatar, dealing way more damage and put even more elemental ailment. Some monks choose to reach into the darkness instead. The Acolyte of Chayula can exchange their mastery of Spirit for Darkness, a resource that can be utilized to both absorb and deal damage. The Shroud of Darkness will protect you from all damage encounters, but if you take Grasp of the Void, you will deal extra chaos damage from all the darkness encounters. Their Dark Pact offers greatly increased resistances to chaos damage, and can allow their mana leak to not only happen instantly, but apply to their energy shield as well. Another node you can take is Waiting Dream, which allows you to see into the domain of the Breach Demons. There you will see the Flames of Chihula, which can be taken to gain life, mana, and damage. The Mercenary has a job to do, but which job suits you? You might choose to become a Witch Hunter. Obsessive Rituals will give you a sorcery ward, allowing you to defend yourself against elemental hits in exchange for less defense against attacks. With Zealous Inquisition, your enemies have a 10% chance to explode on death. The chance is doubled against demons and undead. With Judge, Jury, and Executioner, your initial hit against enemies can deal up to 30% of their life in damage, if you're lucky. This is great against powerful bosses. And with Witchbane, you can break your enemy's concentration, preventing them from casting spells as often as they would usually do. You can also choose to become a Gemling Legionnaire, enhancing your abilities by embedding gems directly in your flesh. Integrated Efficiency will give you extra skill slots. Dermatological Infusion gives you extra maximum resistances as you stock up more and more support gems. Adaptive Capability allows you to use any color of gem without worrying about attributes, while Crystalline Potential adds extra quality bonuses to every gem socketed into your character. So those are the Ascendancy classes for the start of Early Access. But one thing we haven't talked about yet is how you ascend in the first place. Ascension in Path of Exile 2 requires completion of one of the Great Trials, which you'll find as you progress through the campaign. Each one is associated with one of the major cultures of Rayclast. Located in the Vasteri Plains are the Maraketh, a culture of rich tales and brutal traditions, who must do whatever it takes to survive in the desert. The highest position in Maraketh culture is a Sekima, and it is not a title given freely. All aspirants must complete the Trial of the Sekimas, a grueling gauntlet that will test their strength, will, cunning, and patience. To enter, a warrior of the Maraketh must prove their worth by trapping the soul of a gem, a coin, and you are no different. Once you have earned your coin, it may be placed on the relic altar to begin the trial. In the Trial of the Seconds, each room has its own challenges to overcome. In this room, each rare monster you kill will send its blood to the chalice in the center of the room. Once the chalice is filled, you will be able to proceed. While fighting monsters in the trial, you will need to be very careful. Each hit will not only hurt you, but will damage your honor. The monsters are well telegraphed, so that you can avoid their attacks, but if you run out of honor, you will fail the trial and need to find another coin in order to try again. It is a good idea to make sure that you are well prepared before challenging the Trial of the Seconds. After each room you will be rewarded. In this case you have been given a key that can be used to unlock chests later in the trial. Once you have claimed your reward, you will be shown a map of the rest of the floor and may choose how you wish to proceed. Which challenges would you like to face, and which rewards do you want to claim? Some rooms are more dangerous, afflicting you with debuffs that will persist for the entire trial. For example, entering this room will afflict you with Spiked Shell that will cause all monsters in the rest of the trial to have 50% increased life. You will want to take care if you choose such a path. There are many different challenges and rewards as you journey through the trial. Deadly traps, waves of monsters, and strange artifacts will test your honor. As you progress, you'll be able to gain boons from the Jinn, which will help you on your journey. For example, the Sekima's cloak will revive you once if you die, giving you a second shot at a run. One of the rewards you may find is Sacred Water, an extremely valuable and treasured resource to the Jinn and the Maraketh. Trading it with the Jinn will allow you to receive many benefits. You can recover honor, gain additional boons, or remove afflictions. At the end of the floor, you'll find a powerful boss which will truly test your limitations. In order to ascend, you will need to defeat him. Having defeated the boss, you've earned the right to ascend, but first, the loot. The keys you have found may be used to open the various treasures in the vault at the end of the floor. We only have a single bronze key, so we'll just have to open one of these small chests. If you want to open the better ones, you'll need silver or gold keys. Let's use the Altar of Ascendancy. Your first ascension will allow you to pick your class and grant you 2 points to use in the tree. Now there are more floors and many more rewards that can be found within the Trial of the Sekimas, but we'll save that for the section on the endgame. For now, let's talk about the second Ascendancy Trial, the Trial of Chaos. In Path of Exile 2, you can choose whichever trial you like to earn your ascension. Each culture on Rayclast had their own methods to ascend. If the Trial of the Sekimas is not your kind of playstyle, or you're finding it too difficult, you could try another. You can gain all your ascension points from just one, or mix and match them. It's up to you. For early access, we will have 2 trials as options, with a third trial coming later for the full release. While exploring the Vaal jungle, you'll discover the Temple of Chaos. Before the Vaal embraced the science of corruption, their civilization worshipped chaos. This ancient trial was once used by the Vaal to test their high priests. A high priest of the Vaal must show willingness to risk everything to gain power. Entry to the trial requires a token from a strange entity known only as the Trial Master. For those in which he sees potential, he shall inscribe an ultimatum. Many have attempted these trials in search of greatness. Most have perished. Will you be able to defy the odds? Before you begin each chamber, the Trial Master will offer you a reward and a choice. Choose one of 3 tribulations to affect you through the rest of the trial. These modifiers might beef up the monsters, curse the player, or add environmental hazards like turrets or trap runes. In this case, we will be picking shocking turrets. As you enter the room, the Trial Master will fill it with hazards to test your commitment. In this case, you must destroy all the monsters that fill the room, while dealing with the lightning projectiles from the shocking turrets. After each room, you will need to make a choice. Take the rewards you have earned so far, or go double or nothing. Increase your rewards, but take on more risk. Each tribulation you add is minor on its own, but they quickly stack on top of each other and can become overwhelming. There are many types of chambers in the trial. Each will test your resolve in different ways. This one simply requires you survive for a certain amount of time. Another requires you to escort the stone idol to the level as elevators full of monsters descend to attack you. Should you be able to get through the first 3 chambers, you will face your first boss. The order of the bosses is random, and combined with the tribulations you have selected, the fight will never feel the same. After defeating the boss, you may claim your rewards. Of course there are the items, but you also gain the right to ascend. If you already did the Trial of the Sekimas, then you can claim 2 more points to add to your Ascendancy class. Now it's possible to go much deeper. There are more bosses, rewards, and risks to take, but we'll talk more about that when we get to endgame. So how about we talk about that now? So far we've only been showing you footage from the campaign, but some people would argue that the endgame is where the game truly begins. Something that happens almost every time a new action RPG launches is people saying, there isn't enough endgame content. Well, we want to make sure that in PoE 2 people don't feel that way, and we actually only changed our development priority for this recently. The first 3 acts of PoE 2 already take around 25 hours to complete if you're a new player. This is already a pretty significant campaign. On the other hand, people spend hundreds of hours in endgame each league. We realized that finishing the rest of the campaign for early access was actually a bad idea. Instead of having acts 4 to 6 in early access, we could concentrate on endgame and make that great. For new players, a 25-hour campaign is already a huge game with lots of content, but for existing action RPG players, what you mostly care about is all the endgame challenges to overcome. So several months ago, we switched the entire development team's focus over to making endgame content. At the start of early access, there will be 50 bosses and around 400 monster types, but the great thing is that the rest of the game is like 80% there. We'll be adding content to roughly double the size of the game during early access and into release. Now, in order to make the endgame happen at the same character level as what it would be after we added the rest of the acts, we've added a second difficulty level called Crawl, where you repeat the campaign with all the monsters and bosses leveled up, and of course new rewards. You can kind of think of it as like a new game plus. It's also a lot faster to get through the content the second time as your clear speed increases. That will take you to around level 65, where the endgame begins. Once we add the remaining 3 acts, we'll be removing Crawl difficulty, so you'll progress straight from the end of Act 6 to endgame. But what is the endgame? To explain that, I'll hand over to Mark. He can tell you all about it.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Well, one thing that Path of Exile is known for is having a lot of distinct endgame content to choose between. Each endgame mechanic needs to have its own progression system, areas, bosses, rewards, and player power that can only be gained from that content. We are going to be adding a lot more over time, but for Path of Exile 2 we decided to start with 7 distinct systems you can progress through.
This is the Atlas, and it serves as the core of the endgame for Path of Exile 2. It's infinite and expands in all directions. Now, we're not going to spoil the plot too much here, but corruption from the beast has blighted the land, and your objective is to help fight it. In the center of the Atlas you will find the Ziggurat, a temple in which the Vaal research the fundamentals of space and time. Here we can open portals to nearby locations and begin cleansing corruption and finding resources. In order to power the portal device, we will need waystones. Each waystone has a tier which will determine the level of the monsters that you will face. To go to an area, simply click one that is adjacent to an area you've already completed. Insert the waystone and click Traverse. Portals will open, allowing you and your party to travel to the area you have selected. All the areas in in-game feel distinct from locations in the campaign, and we've dialed the randomization up to 11. The monster packs you will face in each map are totally random, and the combination of them can lead to some very interesting combat situations. There are over 400 monster types in early access, and they have a lot of varied and interesting abilities. Depending on which combination you face, you might find some serious challenges. In order to cleanse the corruption from the area, you will need to defeat all the powerful, rare, and unique enemies in it. Once you've done that, the area will be marked as completed, and you'll be able to travel past it to progress deeper into the world. If you die, then the map can no longer be run, and you have to find another way around to get to the areas behind it. There are also all kinds of other random encounters you might run into as you play maps. One such encounter are precursor artifacts. These are ancient corrupting monuments that irradiate the monsters around them. The monsters that feed off corruption are drawn to their power. If you defeat the monsters and cleanse the artifacts, you get a powerful temporary buff. Some of the buffs make you faster, others rain lightning or fire around you, and some even give you increased experience or help you find better items. You can also find strong boxes. These enigmatic chests guard piles of treasure, but are always a trap. Monsters lie in wait to attack you the moment that you open it, and the boxes often have mechanisms to unleash powerful spells or dangerous debuffs. There are different types of strongboxes containing different items, and you can even use your currency items to craft them on the fly so you can optimize the contents. But be careful of opening one that you can't handle. Sometimes you'll discover monsters frozen in essences, solidified crystalline corruption. These dangerous monsters can be broken free. If you defeat them, the essence they drop can be used to upgrade normal items and magic items with a guaranteed mod from the category. For example, we could use this one on some boots to ensure a movement speed mod. Rarely, essences will also drop that allow you to upgrade magics to rares, adding the guaranteed mod. This is incredibly powerful, since it allows you to get a second deterministic mod in your crafting projects. Combining these with the currencies that are commonly found in Raid class for modifying items, and we can get a very nice pair of boots indeed. Now, waystones, like all items, can be crafted using your currency items. Adding prefix mods will improve the rewards, while suffix mods will increase danger. The more dangerous a map is, the more waystones will drop. Adding mods to your waystones is key to progressing to the higher tiers and for sustaining them, but it will require you to take on larger challenges. There are a variety of factors you have to consider when crafting your waystones. Some maps will have higher density, some lower. Some have more magic and rare chests, or monsters. Some are more linear, others more open. Make sure you explore and think about what makes certain maps good if you want to maximize your return. As you cleanse corruption from higher and higher tiers of the Atlas, you will gain points that you can spend in the Atlas tree. This tree allows you to juice the danger and rewards of all areas in the endgame. You could increase the number of monsters, the number of rares, the number of precursor artifacts or strongboxes, even the quantity of item drops. Now, as you explore the endgame world map, you'll notice the various different biomes, from snow-capped mountains to dense jungle valleys. Most maps are restricted to certain biomes. As you continue to explore deeper into the Atlas, there are all sorts of things to discover. These cities are constructed by different peoples of Raid class and have specific items that can be found there. These strange structures marked on the map don't appear to do anything for now. Perhaps you can work out how to use them later. You might find unique maps like Untainted Paradise, an undisturbed island full of beasts that give extreme amounts of experience. You may even find a lonely man just enjoying his retirement who will give you a unique item for free. In addition, you can find special areas that would make a good spot to set up camp. Clear these areas of their hostile inhabitants and you'll be able to claim them as your own hideout. You can decorate your hideout as you see fit, and invite various NPCs to join you there to create your own personal base of operations. A great tool for exploration are towers. These mysterious precursor constructs are dotted around the Atlas. Completing the tower will reveal a large area around it, allowing you to scout out your next challenge. There are a lot of things to find, so keep looking. Some sections of the Atlas are influenced by corruption. This adds extra modifiers to the maps in the region, increasing the difficulty and rewards. Here, slaying monsters in close proximity to each other will cause vestiges of corruption within them to merge together, forming powerful and grotesque abominations. Now you may have noticed while looking at the Atlas that some areas have these icons above them. The icon indicates that the area contains some kind of special encounter. This icon indicates that the area has a powerful boss. Because only 1 in 4 maps contain a map boss, we're able to make them much more powerful and much more rewarding than they were in PoE 1. These bosses come from the campaign, but have had their difficulty increased with changes to AI and some of their abilities. It's worth noting that because you can see where the bosses are, you can choose to take them on or avoid them. If you do choose to hunt bosses though, then you'll be rewarded with special points for the boss hunting section of the Atlas skill tree. The points here will allow you to specialize in boss killing, giving you much greater rewards for defeating them. For each different type of content in the endgame, we're adding specialized trees in order to make it so you don't feel the need to respec your points when you change between different types of content. We'll be showing you 7 of these by the end of this presentation, so there's still a lot more to come. Now, bosses are not the only icon you will see on the Atlas. Let's take a look at one of the endgame systems, Breach. If you've played PoE 1, you might be familiar with Breach. For PoE 2, we've created sequels to several PoE 1 leagues. While the mechanic is familiar, the monsters, bosses, rewards, and progression are all new. A breach is a tear in the fabric of reality. Opening it will allow you to see the demons and otherworldly monstrosities that lie in wait in this other plane of existence. By engaging with a breach, you'll create a bridge between their world and Raid class. In order to keep the breach open, you will need to kill the demons that pour forth. The faster you can kill the monsters, the more monsters you will fight, and the more loot you will find. You can also find classic cans that will open and drop more items if you run over them. These can be a good boost to the rewards of the breach, so keep an eye out. One of the rewards you might find while fighting monsters from Breach are tablets. Tablets are special items that can be used with precursor towers to add more encounters to the Atlas. Breaches will drop breach tablets. Clicking on a completed tower will allow you to consume the tablet to add more breaches to the area within the range of the tower. This makes all content in the Atlas self-sustaining. Want to do more breaches? Find the tablets, add them to your towers, get more breaches, getting more tablets. Soon your Atlas will be covered in otherworldly domains. In addition, like all items in PoE, you can craft them. Use your currency to add more mods to your tablets, allowing you to upgrade all the breaches in range. Tablets can have up to 2 mods. These mods do things like adding extra rare monsters, extra clasped hands, or even monster density of breaches, allowing you to keep them open for longer. Often you will find multiple towers near to each other with overlapping areas of effect. This can allow you to really juice the mechanic by stacking the mods from multiple tablets. In your fight to hold the breach demons at bay, you may want to use the powers of their world against them. Each endgame mechanic always has player power that can only be gained from that mechanic, and Breach is no doubt. In Breach you will find catalysts, items that can increase the quality of rings and amulets by improving specific mods. You can also find Breach Rings, a special base type that can have its quality improved by catalysts up to 50%. In this case, you could create a ring with around 170 life. Breach Rings can become some of the strongest rings in the game, giving you some good motivation to face the demon hordes. In addition, each endgame mechanic needs to have a pinnacle endgame encounter. While killing Breach monsters, you may find Breach Splinters. Collect enough of these and you'll be able to create a Breach Stone. Using a Vile technology called the Realm Gate, you can use your Breach Stone to access their domain and bring the fight to them. In this twisted domain, you will find nothing but a single massive breach. Triggering it will reveal hordes of Breach inhabitants. And should you be fast enough, you'll be able to fight their leader, Zesht, We Who Are One. Now this is just one of the pinnacle encounters of PoE 2. We won't be showing you the rest of them, so you'll have to discover them for yourself, but rest assured, these are some of the hardest content we've ever made. All these encounters have specific uniques that can only be found from them. That's not all. We still have the progression system. Defeating Zesht will give you points to allocate into the Breach section of the Atlas tree. Allocating these points will make breaches and the Breach domain even harder, but will give you more rewards. The small nodes will increase the difficulty of the Twisted Domain, while the large nodes will have more specific bonuses. For example, this node adds more clasped hands to your breaches, and adds packs of magic monsters that can guard them. Get some more points and you can allocate Waking Nightmare, which will double the number of splinters you get from clasped hands and inflict you with a mysterious debuff. In order to earn more points, you'll need to defeat Zesht at a higher difficulty, and some rewards from Zesht can only be found by increasing the difficulty of the Twisted Domain above certain thresholds. Beating Zesht at difficulty 4 will be a challenge indeed, but there are many more threats in Rayquest. Ritual altars are sacrificial sites built by the mysterious King in the Mists. If you encounter this symbol on the Atlas, then you know that an area contains ritual altars. Ritual altars demand tribute. Every monster you slaughter in the circle will feed the altar. After the sacrifice, touch it to begin the ritual. The monsters you've just killed will be resurrected by the King of the Mist's dark magic, and you will fight to survive. The tribute you have offered to the altar can be spent to buy powerful items, but they can be expensive. To gain more tribute, you will want to find more altars. Each successive ritual you do within an area will spawn the monsters revived by the previous one in addition to the ones sacrificed next to it. By the end of an area, you'll be fighting a truly imposing number of foes, but will have a significant amount of tribute. One of the rewards you can buy with tribute are omens. These are special items that allow for meta crafting. crafting items that affect other crafting items. Have an item with good prefixes but bad suffixes? This omen will help you remove the mods you don't want while keeping the ones you do. There are a bunch more of these with different effects, but we'll leave those for you to discover. Now don't forget that Ritual will also drop tablets which can be used to specialize in getting more rituals. If you want to get to the pinnacle boss of Ritual, then you'll probably want to use them. They can also be crafted to grant mods, making your rituals more rewarding. The pinnacle encounter of Ritual is the King in the Mists. Feared by the Izmeri people, he is said to have brought eternal darkness to the Wildwood. We won't show the encounter, but just like Breach, there are a range of unique items you can get for defeating him, and you will gain points in the Ritual section of the Atlas tree. Some maps have been touched by insanity. A mysterious entity has taken special interest in you. Step through the looking glass and you will find your nightmares coming to life. When you touch the mirror, the mists of delirium will spread out across the area, infecting your mind. You must stay within the mist to maintain the nightmare, which is as profitable as it is terrifying. Everything you kill will increase the rewards that drop. However, the deeper into the mist you travel, the stronger the monsters are. Be careful not to overstay your welcome. Rare and unique enemies will become vessels for terrifying demons who will manifest out of them to unleash powerful attacks on you. The mist also offers a strange crafting material, distilled emotions. By combining these emotions, you are able to instill your amulet with a notable from the passive skill tree. This is like gaining an extra passive point for free attached to your gear. They are also particularly great because you don't have to traverse the tree to get to them, allowing you to get off-class bonuses that would normally be much harder to get. Distilled emotions can also be used to instill your endgame maps, applying Delirious to them and adding additional difficulty and rewards, allowing you to further juice your endgame maps. The tablets you can find for Delirium can be used to further improve it. Increase pack size, fog dissipate slower, or improve your progress towards the pinnacle encounter of Delirium. Speaking of which, every now and then you will find simulacrum splinters. The mysterious entity will create strange encounters based on warped versions of your own memories. Monsters and simulacrums come in waves that get progressively more difficult. You'll receive loot at the end of each wave, and you'll have to make the decision to leave now or continue on, facing up against even tougher foes from the mist. The bosses you will face as you get deeper into the simulacrum are truly terrifying. Still sane, Exile? If you can complete a simulacrum, you will gain points for the Delirium section of the Atlas skill tree. Next up, we have Expedition. Occasionally, while clearing corruption, you will encounter these Kalguran settlers. The Kalgurans have discovered ancient burial sites with lost Verisium artifacts, and they want you to help them dig them up, with explosives. The Kalgurans have marked the locations where the relics can be found. Place explosives as best you can to dig up as many as possible. There's just one problem. Corruption has brought the corpses of their ancestors to life, so you might have to do a little bit of cleanup before you can reclaim the artifacts. You can also find remnants, the destruction of which will further anger the restless dead. Each one you blow up will make subsequent monsters more powerful, but also more rewarding. Danig, Rog, Tujin, and Gwenin will exchange the artifacts for useful items and runic magic. You can also find tablets that increase the number of expeditions and the rewards. This one increases the radius of the explosives, while this one increases the number of remnants you will find. Eventually, you might discover a logbook. These are special maps full of buried treasure and relics, essentially one giant dig site. Here you can create an extremely long chain of explosives and go through a very high number of remnants, but be very careful. Many remnants have mods that can really brick your build, so you'll probably want to avoid those ones. If you add too many remnants, you can easily make the encounter harder than you can handle. There are all sorts of interesting things buried under the ground in logbooks. You might find dripping caves or hidden pirate caches, but the most powerful encounter is Olroth, the ancient undead commander of the Knights of the Sun. Defeating him will grant you unique rewards as well as points to spend in the expedition section of the Atlas tree. So those are the endgame systems on the Atlas, but we're not done yet. The trials we talked about earlier have much more content when you get to the endgame too. Just like the other endgame systems, they also have progression mechanics, unique rewards, and player power that can only be gained from them. As you get higher level coins for the Trial of the Secumus, you will unlock more floors to explore. Each floor has its own challenging rules and a floor boss that you'll need to kill. There are 4 floors in total, leading to another pinnacle boss at the end of the last floor, which can only be accessed at endgame. The trial of the Septimus is where you will find jewels which you can socket into your tree. These are like passives that you can craft with your currency items. They can be really powerful as they allow you to stack modifiers that may not easily be accessible on the tree normally. This jewel gives lightning damage and shock chance, for example. There are quite a few jewel sockets on the tree, so it's possible to gain a lot of power here. There are also other types of jewels that don't provide any bonuses themselves, but affect other passives surrounding them. This jewel increases the effect of small nodes in radius by 25%. With careful placement in the tree, you could get a significant amount of power from it. There are also unique jewels available with very interesting effects, but you'll have to find those for yourself. In order to push further into the trial and uncover the secrets of the Maraketh, you will want to take advantage of its progression system, relics. Relics are items that can be placed in the relic altar as you start the trial. They give special bonuses that affect the trial, making it easier and increasing its rewards. Of course, you can craft these with your currency items too, making them even stronger. If you can complete the entire trial overcoming all 4 floors, the final boss will reward you with one of many unique relics. These relics will be consumed when used on the next run, but can reward you with unique and powerful items. For example, this is the Last Flame. If you use it, you will only have 1 honor for the entire trial, so you will need to do a completely hitless run. The Trial of Chaos also extends into endgame. As you gain inscribed ultimatums of higher and higher levels, the number of chambers that you can go through increases. In true Vaal style, this allows you to take even more risks, but even more rewards. At endgame, you can progress to up to 10 chambers with 3 bosses in a single run. Stacking 10 tribulations on top of each other will make this a significant challenge, but it's worth it. The Trial Master will tempt you with items from the Vaal Empire, such as Vaal Orbs. Vaal Orbs are powerful crafting items that corrupt your gear with random mysterious outcomes. Corruption prevents an item from being modified further, so it has to be the last step of your craft, but it's also the most dangerous one. For example, if you use one on your body armor, it might add a powerful new enchantment, or it might just re-roll the entire item, bricking it completely. Vaal Orbs also have the ability to add a socket, allowing you to bypass the normal restriction of how many sockets an item can have. A body armor could get up to 3 sockets this way, allowing for a significant number of mods. Vaal Orbs can even modify uniques. Adding enchantments or sockets to uniques can make them incredibly powerful, but there's a good chance you'll break them as well. The Trial Master will also occasionally offer you soul cores. Originally formed by Chaos, the Vaal sought to replicate soul cores through human sacrifice rituals and blood magic to power their civilization. Soul cores are powerful socketable items with mods that cannot be obtained from regular runes. Like all endgame content, there is of course a pinnacle boss. The final chamber will drop keys to this mysterious door. Some say this is where the Trial Master himself resides. Perhaps you're willing to take the risk and find out. Had enough yet? Because there's still just one more thing. The most difficult content in Path of Exile 2. While mapping, you may come across this fortress with a pillar of flame and ash rising from the center that has emerged from underground, surrounded by an enormous maze riddled with danger. Is the maze preventing something getting in, or something getting out? This fortress is of ancient origin, and its construction has similarities to the towers and tablets that you have been using on your journey through the endgame. It is clear from the entrance that there are 3 keys required to enter. Local factions are vying for access to the fortress in order to seize the power they believe will be inside. Each of the faction's leaders have managed to get their hands on one of the keys, so you'll need to defeat them. Each faction is led by an Uber-Act boss. You can see one of them inhabiting this city, but in order to fight him, you will first need to defeat their 2 lieutenants in the adjacent zone. Be careful, if you fail against either of the lieutenants, or to kill their leader, they will move on and you need to find them again. Kill all the Uber bosses and you will gain access to the fortress. We aren't going to spoil it, as we can't wait to see you guys attempt it for the first time. But is there a tree you get points in after killing it? Of course there is. This is Path of Exile. There's always another tree.
Alright guys, hopefully the microphone situation's a little bit better this time. Yeah, all right. So now we're going to enter the Q&A section, and I guess basically any questions that you have, just feel free to put them in chat, and I'll try to do my best to answer as many of them as I can. So just throw them in, and I'll be happy to do that. Okay, yeah, I just found another microphone, so we should be better now. Alright, so the first question, how do you progress your maps from Tier 1 to Tier 16? So effectively, it's similar to how it was in Path of Exile 1, where as you complete the maps that can drop are effectively based on the eye level of the content you're fighting, and what that means is that when you fight bosses or rares, they have a chance to increase the tier. So effectively, that will make them go up. But it's important to note that as you go up the tiers, they get rarer. But then you can offset that by effectively crafting your maps to add more mods to make it more difficult to get more stones and adding points in the passage tree and so on. The next one says, with Path of Exile 2, you've made a huge effort to lower the barrier to entry during the game's onboarding process. How do you plan to continue this through future leagues? So effectively, we just have to make sure that we're making a really good effort to make sure that we've always got good tutorialization in this stuff. And I think it's going to be a lot easier going forward, just because the base systems are a lot easier to deal with as well. But still, I mean, if someone's watching all this end game stuff, you may feel a bit overwhelmed, and that's because the end game really is the part where things start to get a bit more hardcore. Like ideally, anyone should be able to get through the campaign, but the end game really is the place where we get all the much more complicated systems. So a lot of kind of the more complicated league mechanics and so on that we have can sit in end game. Ideally, when we introduce the content at first, though, we can kind of make sure there's a nice tutorial and kind of get people on board. The next one we have is Path of Exile 1 has a lot of crazy powerful affixes like Breach Lord modifiers, T0 Essence mods, and Influence affixes. What do the most powerful affixes in PoE 2 look like? Well, I guess you'll just have to play the game to find out, but there's a lot of good things to find. And the next one I have is, how will boss fights be different in PoE 2, or will it just be similar? So one of the things that I think is really important is that in PoE 1 there was a boss at the end of every map, and that effectively meant that in order to be able to have that take a reasonable amount of time, we kind of had to make those bosses not as powerful as we might have wanted to. In PoE 2, not every map has a boss in it. There are random chance of 1 in 4, but you can see them on the atlas. And so that means that we can effectively make the boss fights much more significant, but also much more rewarding. And if you want to hunt bosses, you can do that. But if you want to, just avoid them, then that's fine too. So I think that'll make the boss fighting experience significantly better. Like when you want to do it, you can, and if you don't want to, you don't have to. But either way, they can be a lot more powerful. The next question is, with PoE 1 releasing on consoles, do you guys have a similar plan with PoE 2 in terms of how consoles and PC are split? So for consoles, for PoE 2, we're having full cross-play and cross-progression. So effectively, it'll be releasing on console exactly the same time as on PC, and all the content will release at the same time as well. So effectively, for PoE 2, you can play together on console and PC just fine. The next question is, with the changes to flasks, and you still combine flasks of the same size to make a higher grade, or just loot higher ones? There actually will be a way to do that, but I think in early access we haven't put that crafting system in. So one of the things that, just sort of answer a different question, is that the vendor in PoE 1 was very arcane, and you often didn't know what recipes were. In PoE 2, we've tried to make it be that a lot of the things that you'd previously use vendor recipes for now have like specific benches or things like that you get as you earn throughout the campaign to get those things to be able to do them. So effectively, those kinds of things are still there. There's just more discoverable than they were before. The next question is, are jewels for passive skill trees only obtainable in game trials? So I believe that they are. So in the particular trial of the Sekimas. So effectively, we want to make sure that for each type of content, there's some kind of player power that you only get from that. So jewels are the player you can get specifically from the trials, and but bear in mind that everything is fully tradable. So effectively, if you don't want to do those trials, then you can always trade something from a different in-game system to someone who is doing that trial, and you'll be able to do that. The next question was, is there still vendor recipes? And yeah, the answer is actually no, just like I was explaining before, but we have tried to get all the functionality the vendor recipes had and put them into various specific things that are more easy to explain to new players. Because, you know, for example, for a 3-1 recipe, rather than having a vendor recipe that you have to work out, there might be an object somewhere you can click on that's got like 3, specific places to put items and produce something out. So those kinds of things will be unlocked during the campaign and kind of slowly introduce you to the concepts, so that we can kind of make sure that stuff is more discoverable. The next question is, to a casual onlooker / non-fan, how do you describe the difference between PoE 1 and 2? And why are both games actively supported? So I would say the primary one is that PoE 2, a lot of systems have been simplified, especially early game, to kind of make them a lot easier. And we've tried to make it so that there's a lot less incidental complexity. So ideally we can keep the depth still there while maintaining while not having to have so much complexity. The reason why both games are actively supported is because there are a lot of players who like how PoE 1 is, and we believe that PoE 1 as a distinct game doesn't need to die just because we want to make a sequel. So effectively, we just believe that it's just a good idea to do that. If there are going to be players, I'm sure, who will like PoE 2 and not PoE 1, and there will be players who are the opposite of that and like PoE 1 and not PoE 2. And so there's no reason to kill off PoE 1, as far as we can tell. So we'll keep supporting them. The next question is death locking you out of Path. So that means that if you die when you're solo, yes, you have to find your way around. And for co-op, we actually now, how did that work? So they actually changed the rules on this recently. So I believe that in maps, how did it work? Sorry, I actually can't quite remember. There is a rule in maps for reviving, and I can't quite remember exactly what it is at this time. But effectively, you can't just completely cheese through maps by just dying in co-op constantly. There are some restrictions about that that ideally mean that it's not going to be, it's not going to be quite so cheesy. The next question is it possible to get locked out of locations completely if you fail several times? Yes, that is possible, but of course you can always, it's an infinite map, you can always keep exploring and find another copy. But we did want death to have a cost, so it doesn't cost you anything in terms of experience or anything like that anymore, but it does cost you effectively the opportunity of getting the items that you would have been able to get from that map. So yes, that can mean that sometimes you might have a tower where you die, then you just can't get to that tower anymore, and so that's the thing. The next question is, can you relocate your hideout or is it in a fixed spot? Yeah, so you can, but it's worth mentioning that you don't have to do maps adjacent to where the last map you did. You can do a map on anywhere on the atlas that you've done next to something that you've done before. So effectively, while you can relocate your hideout to different places, it actually doesn't really matter where it is on the atlas, since you can just kind of go anywhere next to somewhere you've already done before. The next question is, was respecing discussed? Yes, absolutely. So you don't use Orbs of Regret, you use gold. The price is designed to be at the early game very cheap, and then as you progress through the game it gets a bit more expensive, and then by the time you're in endgame it will be relatively expensive in terms of, if you want to change your entire character once you've already reached level 90, that will take you a little bit of time because the gold prices escalate. But as you start the game, and if you just want to change a few points, it's always relatively easy. Yeah, generally speaking, that should be fine. And the other thing as well is that changing attributes is half price, so that means you can respec to just equip gear much more easily. The next question is, would you say PoE 2 is expected to be bigger, broader, and deeper compared to PoE 1? I think that it is and it isn't in different ways. So Path of Exile 1 has like a huge amount of systems that have been added over time, and for PoE 2 we're obviously adding a lot as well to the endgame here. But I think that PoE 1, as far as just like the amount of different systems you have to know about, is much higher. For PoE 2 though, I would say that the combat is deeper because there's much more stuff going on with combinations that you can do sort of actively between different skills. But I mean, it's sort of a little bit tricky, right? Because obviously one's a game that's been supported for so long and PoE 2 is just new. Yeah, I guess that sort of hopefully answers that question. The next thing is as we go forward, the next question is, will we extend the duration of leagues in the future? I don't think we will, but that being said, I mean, we'll have to play it by ear. Ultimately, we want to judge the time between leagues based on the amount of time that people take to feel like they're done with them. But the 3-month cadence we've always found has been very good, so ideally we can get back to that for PoE2 as well. And the next question is, will the press media build carry over to the public early access build? By extension, will the early access progress carry over the way the full 1.0 full version? So any kind of press and early access and beta stuff we're doing before the any sort of press stuff that we are doing that can be played, unfortunately none of that stuff will carry over. But your early access characters will technically carry over to the full version, but in a league that will never touch standard. So if for anyone who doesn't know what a league is, effectively it's like a separate play area where characters can't interact with people from different leagues. So normally what happens at the end of each season is that the league will migrate into a league called Standard, which contains all the characters. But for early access characters, those are going to go into a special version just called Early Access. And effectively, you'll still be able to play those characters, but they'll never be able to have interact economically with the characters who play on 1.0. And that's just because we want it so that if there are things that we change economically about the game in the full version, we just want to be able to say, okay, yeah, like everyone gets to still play your own characters. If you want to do that, you can, but those characters are not effectively part of the standard economy, if you know what I mean. So we won't actually be wiping, but we will be not having them in the same group. Next question is, how do you find a good middle ground between being more accessible to onboarding new players while still providing a satisfying start for more experienced players from PoE 1? I think the answer to that is actually interesting because what we've actually found is that in some cases PoE 1 players can actually have a slightly more difficult time than new players. And I think that's because the new players often are thinking about things in terms of, when they encounter a boss, they're like, okay, how can I get better at play in order to be able to defeat this thing. Whereas sometimes a PoE 1 player is like, okay, I'm going to use my knowledge of how the how PoE works to try and defeat this thing. And sometimes that knowledge can actually be incorrect because systems have changed how they work and so on. It's actually quite a different game in a lot of ways. So what we've found during testing is that PoE 1 players do eventually get to the point where they're faster than PoE the new players are. But those new players right at the beginning actually have somewhat of an advantage just from being action game players. So the next question is, how has the early access experience been for the team? Were some of the learning points or challenges to releasing the game as an in-progress state compared to delaying it to a full release? So we've always been a fan of releasing content with a quick cadence. And I think that the experience we've had launching leagues all the time has actually been something that's really led to the fact that we want to be able to release content early and often and get feedback from the community and then be able to modify things. I think it's something that our company's actually very good at. So it's actually going to be very nice getting back to the state for PoE 2 where we're not like making things for years and years without anyone playing them. So I'm actually really looking forward to early access where we get to kind of respond to what the community is wanting. We get to look at what the game needs and add that as opposed to kind of guessing and trying to sort of go do this like sort of large content treadmill that we're on at the moment. So I think that's actually going to be quite fun. But I think that we're a studio that likes doing development of a live game. So I think that's going to be good. So the next question is, with Acts 4, 5, and 6 being locked for early access, are players required to play the core versions of Acts 1, 2, 3 in order to access the endgame? So the answer is yes, you will. And that's basically because we want to make sure that the progression during early access isn't affected by the fact that we don't have those acts in the game. It's actually... super important that you kind of have if we weren't testing the progression in the correct way, I think that we wouldn't, that feedback would not be as usable. Now it's worth mentioning that as you get through later on, clear speeds increase and so on. So it's going to feel a lot faster to play through the acts the second time. And the other thing as well is that there's new rewards and things like that. And the other thing is actually one more thing as well is that the at least especially for the early bosses, the balance of the stuff, it isn't just a matter of more life and damage. There are changes to AI that happen as the bosses level up, which are important as well for the end game too. So things get more difficult in other ways as well in terms of how the bosses and so on react to you, and how well they track and all that sort of things. There's all these sort of tweaks we have to do to make sure that as you get to the higher level content, that stuff is still challenging. So I think a lot of that stuff will be a challenge even in the second difficulty. But I'm certainly looking forward to the point when we don't have to have a crawl version as well. It would be nice to have Acts 4, 5, and 6 in the game as well once we get to that. Next question is, will it be playable offline on Steam Deck? Unfortunately, not offline, no. We are an online game with a secure economy, so online play is required. You can play on the Steam Deck, and that does work. So if that's what you want to do, then you can do it. I haven't actually tried it myself, so I can't really vouch for that quality, but I have heard that it is playable. From my understanding, the 40 FPS mode makes the game feel the best on Steam Deck, but you can certainly play there just fine. The next question is, how does cross-progression work with the paid version for early access? Will someone be able to own a cheaper edition on one platform and a more expensive on another, but still access everything? So the answer to that is that on all platforms, the base price to get into the game is $30 US. And what that gets you is a key to play, and also $30 of points for the microtransaction store that you can use. You'll probably buy some stash tabs and things like that, and other cosmetics. So the higher versions, all of those are effectively just more exclusive microtransactions and which are all cosmetics things, and we also start including things like physical goods like t-shirts and hoodies and things like that, as well as there's also an art book that you get for the higher ones too. So effectively, that's all just fine. So I guess that works there. So any offline support for console? No, we are an online game, as I was saying before. What can we expect for group content and systems? We saw couch co-op feature and it was good, but I'm wondering what you have in store for big group play like 4-man parties or guilds. So our co-op is up to 6 players. That's kind of the limit before things start to get so hectic that we don't think it actually makes sense to go higher than that anymore. And that's true for PoE 1 as well. So effectively 6-person co-op is good. You can play co-op across different platforms if you like. You can also have people in playing couch co-op be 2 people in a larger party if you like. So that all kind of works. That all works in early access as well, and all content effectively can be played either solo or in co-op all the way through the game. There are guilds as well, but guilds are kind of more really of a social thing. You can have a guild hideout and guild stash in order to sort of share items, but there aren't kind of like larger raids or anything like that. It's still, in terms of actual playing together, it's still 6-people parties. So the guilds are kind of more about like organization and chat channels and sharing items and things like that. The next question is, will there be able to be any PvP features? We do technically have dueling, but it's kind of not like it's not really our focus. Like, we sort of have it just because we already had it in PoE 1, and it's something that we can do, but it's not really a big deal for PoE. The player versus player is more about who can get through the game faster, who can beat the bosses first, who can get the best items, rather than direct combat. Next question is, have you seen currency exchange return because it was a real game changer for Settlers of Kalgur? Have there been any big additions or changes made to it? Not really, to be honest. It's working just the same in PoE 1 as it is in PoE 2 at the moment. So we're very happy with how that went, and so that's why we're keeping it. Next question. With PoE 1, I pretty much always had to use a guide to have a build capable of taking on the Shaper or Uber. With this game, was there an effort to make it a bit easier to see endgame bosses while experimenting with your own builds? So effectively, I would say that through the campaign, I don't think you'll need a build guide to get through that at all. For endgame, though, especially for the pinnacle content, I do think that that is going to be harder. Now, that isn't necessarily to say you have to use a build guide, but at the same time, I mean, that stuff is designed to be hard. It's designed to challenge people. You kind of need to have some level of aspirational content, because if you don't have that, then the endgame won't be compelling for the kind of hardcore players. So but what we've kind of tried to do though is that for the pinnacle content, all of it kind of has these like different difficulty tiers that you get by so the first time you kill a pinnacle boss, it won't be as hard, and then you can but when you do that, you get more points to make it harder. And so I think that it's not so much a question of can you kill for example the Breach Lord one time. It's the question is, can you kill it on difficulty 4? And that'll be really real, I think that the challenges and, streamers, competing on how long it takes to kill them, this kind of thing, I think that will be really real challenges. So it will be very interesting to us to see, where we manage to get to with the difficulty there. Whether how many days does it take before someone gets the pinnacle boss, which we didn't say the name of, before we get a difficulty 4 kill of that. It could be a little wild, depending on on how high we've managed to get that. It's always hard to tell though, because you never know when there can be a broken build that just makes everything kind of crazy. Next question is, a hideout's only an end game. Can you get one from the Atlas map? You only get a hideout for the first time from the Atlas, but they are shared across your across your whole account. So once you've found a hideout in end game, you'll have a hideout from that point onwards forever. And you can go to them. They don't actually give you any advantage during the campaign, so having a hideout during the campaign doesn't really matter. But it's just nice to have your hideout that you decorate and everything to stick around. So that's why we do that. Next question. The addition of dodge roll mechanic, especially with no cooldown, is quite a game changer when it was first announced. What did the team design process when deciding to include this feature? Were there any cutbacks that had to be put in place due to it? So effectively, we had to do a lot of boss work when we added dodge roll, because once you've got dodge roll, it kind of means that the bosses need to be balanced with the expectation of dodge roll. Whenever we're doing a telegraphed skill, then we have to take that into account. We have to make sure that especially as you go later into the game, that the expectation is you're going to have to use a dodge roll to get away from this thing, or at least a crazy amount of run speed. But generally speaking, dodge roll is going to be necessary. So there's a lot of that stuff we have to care about. We had to do a lot of balance with regard to bosses. We always have to have a period of how long can they lock on for, how fast can they readjust their aim. We have to adjust all of those things with regard to it. So it certainly was quite a lot of work, but I think it added a lot, and I think that makes the game feel a lot better. Next idea is, I love the idea of PoE, but it's always been so intimidating / confusing, and I find myself confused around level 35 and give up every time. So I'm thrilled. Oh, right, not actually a question. It's just a compliment. So yes, I'm glad to hear it. So I hope you are able to get to end of campaign without too much trouble. So next question is, someone who's never played PoE, jumping straight into PoE 2, and I'm seeing a lot of mechanics features that are quite overwhelming my brain. From a dev perspective, is there a worry that new players will want to try the game but tap out for a couple of days or weeks? So as I said before, I think part of the reason for that is because this presentation here, right before we go into early access, is very much focused around the end game. Now, the campaign is something that it's got all the storyline stuff, and we kind of don't really want to spoil most of it. So that's why we haven't focused on so much here. And of course, the end game is where everything kind of heats up in difficulty and becomes more complicated. So because of the very nature of the presentation we're doing here, it will seem a bit more overwhelming. But I can assure you that getting through the campaign, I think that you will have a great time, and I think new players will have a great time as well. Next question is, in early access, is the SSF hardcore or ruthless? So the answer is there's no ruthless, because we don't need it anymore. Ruthless was a good experiment, but for PoE 2, we just don't need it anymore, because we've improved the item system in different ways than what Ruthless did. So I think that we've got something here that's much better than Ruthless, and also better than what PoE 1 has as far as item systems go. For SSF and hardcore, yes, they absolutely have them. SSF means solo self-found, which means that you can't trade. It's a game mode that I think a lot of people enjoy, because it's an extra challenge, and for the people who enjoy that, that's always fun. And the next question is there hardcore? And yes, there is as well, but I would highly recommend that you do not play the game through the first time on hardcore, because bosses are designed to kill you. Hopefully it'll take you at least one death to learn the mechanics before you can fight a boss. But once you play through the game once in regular, I think that playing through hardcore you will find to be fine, because everything's telegraphed well. Once you know the mechanics, not dying is actually absolutely just fine. The next question is, important question, are there cats? Well, there's various cat monsters, and of course there's cat pets that you can buy in the store, so that's always fun. Can the witch pet her minions? Unfortunately, no, I don't think you can. I think there are a few MTXs in the store you can pet, though. Do you think the game progression is new player friendly? I think that it is. I think we're doing a lot better here than what PoE 2 did. So I think that if you're a new player, you should find that you can do it. That being said, we are a hardcore game, right? We're designed that you do die, right? You don't just go into the game. Ideally, the first boss will kill you. But that's kind of, I think, setting the expectation that that's going to be part of the fun is something that can be good for new players. And one of the things we've also tried to really improve on is making sure that if you are failing a boss, then now we have a map that lets you see all the other sort of side content that's around, and being able to see that means you can kind of go off and do some other side content. All that stuff gives you progression. There'll be player power you can get from them. There'll be items that are hard-coded for those things that you'll get. So if you have all of that stuff, then then you should be able to find, if you just do a few side things, come back, and the boss should not be a problem for you. So that's one of those things that I think that we're doing a lot better job of signaling in PoE 2. So I think that improves it a lot. Next question is there option to change the POV/camera, or will it be just like that as a trademark for PoE? Yes, the camera is fixed. You might have noticed that you can actually see more in PoE 2. The camera zoom is a little bit different. But yeah, it's designed to be top-down. This is just kind of the style of the game that we have. What have we got here? Hang on, was there something about dragon riding? Unfortunately, not something that we have. Although we do have rower riding. There's a rower mount that the ranger can get, so that's kind of fun. Next question is, what were the most significant feedback you got from PoE 1 that greatly informed the way you approach PoE 2? So I think probably the main one was that, so whenever we release an expansion for PoE 2, for PoE 1 rather, it's always very interesting to see what is the feedback we get outside of the PoE community. Like if we go to sort of more like game communities that aren't the PoE community, what are they saying about the game? And probably the main one was that they found the combat to be clunky in PoE 1, and that is absolutely the case, because at the start of PoE 1, we're talking about a game that has not really had like animation improvements and so on for more than a decade. Like a lot of the combat systems and so on, like there's interesting stuff like stat-wise and like mechanics that are more, like how to build your character type things, but not really in the just pure combat sense. So that's something that PoE 2 just does much better, and something that I think that will cause a lot of the players who tried PoE 1 and maybe didn't like it to come back and enjoy it a lot more. And the other one, of course, was all the feedback about complexity and so on. And as I said, I think for the beginning of the game, we've done a lot better with that. Next question, is there any unique punishment for cheating? Well, we don't really talk about that because, any more you talk about how you deal with cheaters, the more that you can't deal with them. But what I will say is that Path of Exile is a server authoritative game. And what that means is that cheating is much, much harder in PoE. And in fact, it's been very, very rare that we've actually had any kind of economic problems or issues like that over time. So yeah, it's very rare that we deal with those kinds of things. We tend to deal with them very fast as well. So the generally speaking, we thankfully don't have to answer that question too often. Next question is, so yes, you're not getting access tonight, unfortunately. So we're going into early access in a couple of weeks, but I think you guys will hopefully enjoy that. The next question is, you mentioned each of the Ascension trials is tied to different cultures/civilizations. Will we learn more about each civilization, like the Vile, throughout the campaign as well? Absolutely. So we've actually got way more storyline stuff going on. I think the storytelling in PoE 2 is way better than what we were doing in PoE 1. There's lots of lore objects that are optional you can find as well, and just generally speaking, a lot more going on through it. The whole campaign is fully voiced. We have lots of characters, voiced lore things around the place. We're just doing a lot better with that overall. There's a lot going on there. Next question is, as far as trees goes, you make the joke there's always another tree. Does that mean there will always be something new to do and not enough points to unlock everything across the tree if you play long enough, or is it possible to get 100% completion and finish all the trees? So the answer is that it isn't possible to get 100% on all the trees. What we've done is effectively those trees generally have kind of like 12 to 18 points in them, and usually get 8 points that you can put in them. So you do have to make some kind of decisions for each of the trees. But the important thing about separating them out is that there isn't this problem that we had in PoE 1 where you have to decide like, oh, am I going to specialize in this content or am I going to specialize in that content? You can get all the points to specialize in all the content eventually by playing. And so that means that, you kind of had this FOMO before where it's like, if I specialize in this thing, I'm not going to be able to do that thing. So you can, at least for each content type, you can play one content type, switch to another one, switch back, and you don't have the problem of like, but when I play this other content, I haven't done that content. So I think that will be a lot better. And it's also, generally speaking, the trees are smaller, they're more specialized, it's more obvious what your choices are. So I think that will be a lot better as well. Next question is, Path of Exile 1 has a lot of tools like Path of Building and Awaken PoE Trade, which players use while playing PoE. What's your stance towards tools and add-ons? So generally speaking, look, tools outside the game are going to happen. They always do. So, that's just the name of the game, really. You always have to deal with that stuff. What I want to make sure, though, is that people feel like the game, the information that the game is giving them is better than what it was in PoE 1. And we are working towards that. There's quite a lot more going on. So you'll be able to see... now, we don't have damage numbers flying up over the screen, because I really don't like that. But we do have damage numbers that you can see at the top right-hand of health bars. so that you can see how much damage you're dealing. We've also got improved stuff going on with the character screen, so you can see a lot more about what effect adding your things to your character is doing. We've even got things like when you hover over passes in the tree and hold a button, you can see what effect that will have on your character. And there's even a help system built in where you can like hover over specific terms and see what they mean. So these kinds of things I think will help a lot with just getting information within the game. But once again, people are always going to want to have tools that extend those capabilities. So that'll happen. As for add-ons to the actual game itself, we try to avoid that where possible. We tend to dislike people doing actual client modification. But there is a rule that so long as you don't actually modify the client, and so long as you don't have something that does like a macro that can do more than one action with a single button, then we generally take the stance that is acceptable, but we try to avoid it where possible. Next question. Particle effects / spell effects have always been the bane of PoE 1s. How does the team address this for PoE 2, especially with folks with clunkier rigs and poor vision? So the answer to that is that because we're kind of designing everything from the ground up here, we were able to do a lot of making sure that there's different sort of spaces for different types of effects. So even though it can still be the case that you can get like some pretty crazy skill effects, we've really tried to make sure that we both get the good skill effects while also having much better clarity of what you can see. You saw, however, some in-game footage in that run, and there was certainly, you certainly can get fast, and you can certainly get a lot of things going on the screen. So I guess you'll just have to, play that and sort of see how you feel about it. I think we're doing a much better job than before, but it's a challenge, right? We're a game that allows the player to do a lot of things, and so that can mean that you get a lot of things on screen. But I think we are doing better in this regard. Next question is that there was 20 Years of Peace. So the game is a direct sequel to the first one. And the answer to that is yes, it is a direct sequel. However, we've really tried to make sure that the plot is understandable to someone who hasn't played Path of Exile 1. So the world is kind of in a state that comes off the back of what PoE 1 had. But if you don't know anything about that, then it's not a big deal for you. That being said, we've also tried to make it so there are a lot of like references and things in the lore and so on that if you were a big PoE 1 lore fan, then there's a lot of stuff that does extend that stuff, and we're obviously like trying to make sure that we don't have to retcon anything, that everything's consistent with what we had in PoE 1. But you don't need to know all of that stuff. Next question is, can we discuss the cinematic coverage tomorrow? You actually can, because we are showing it after all. I had previously said in a previous event that the cinematic was embargoed until the game came out, but we actually have changed relayed out what we were announcing at different times, so the cinematic is okay to talk about once the embargo for this lifts, so that's all fine. Next question is, can you include information or direct quotes from this Q&A session in our coverage tomorrow? You absolutely can. So absolutely no problem. Everything I've said today I will be able to be talked about tomorrow. The next question is, when will the available supporter packs be detailed? So in tomorrow's live stream, we're going to be showing all of that stuff. All that will be in there. Next question is, what software will be used to track cheaters? So we don't have any. We don't have an anti-cheat, so a lot of games are released with client-side anti-cheat stuff that that players dislike. We don't do anything like that. We don't have. It's okay. We do have some anti-cheat stuff, but we don't do any kind of the stuff that I guess a lot of games are. That players don't like. Kernel level drivers and all that kind of thing. We're not a fan of that kind of stuff. So it's more better that I don't talk about it, because the more information is out there about that, the worse it is for tracking people. But ultimately, since we're server authoritative, it's a much we don't tend to have to do all that kind of stuff that that players don't like. Next question is, will macro on keyboard or mouse be blocked? The answer to that is that it is a bannable offense to do macros that do multiple actions, but that's, it's not like we're being like, hey, if you run this, if you run shouldn't get into it too much, but effectively, like, we're not just going to be like doing dumb things where we're like, okay, are you running auto hotkey, you know, you're banned, that kind of thing. Like, we don't do that kind of stuff. We're much cleverer with how we detect this kind of things. Our next question is, will you release minimum PC requirements of the game? I believe that it's on the Steam profile page right now, so you should be able to see that. Our next question is, how is leveling speed scaling compared to PoE 1? Does half of 100 still equal 98? The leveling progression is a little bit different in PoE 2, but I don't know that I can answer the exact question that you have there. One thing I will say is that the max level of the starting level of maps is now 65 instead of 68. And therefore the max level of maps is therefore also reduced by 3 levels as well. And what that means is that the leveling at the very end of the curve will take a little bit longer to get to 100. So I expect the race to 100 will take a little bit longer than it did before, just because the maximum content is also a few levels lower than it was before. But that's kind of just a random, just in the weeds detail, I guess. All right, so we seem to have run out of questions for now. Hopefully, I was talking very fast there because I tend to get into these things. So hopefully you guys actually understood what I was talking about. But yeah, I guess that is the, unless you guys have any last remaining questions that you'd like to throw in there, then I guess then we're all good. All right, no problem. And thank you very much for coming here, and hopefully you enjoyed the draft of the trailer we have tomorrow. One thing I will just mention to you guys is that the version that we played today didn't have final audio, so none of the music was in there, and that meant that the experience of it wasn't quite as good as what it will be for the full version tomorrow. But you know, hopefully you guys still enjoyed it, and you know, thank you very much for coming, and you know, yeah, like hopefully you guys enjoy the game and release it. So excellent. All right.